We've already turned on the recording. Hello, everybody. This is JC from Seven Rings of Wealth and Wisdom. I'm turning the announcements over to Victoria. Go ahead, Victoria.
Thank you, JC, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Today we have the pleasure of having our very first Abundance Life Coach, Greg Clowminzer. Greg is a transformational business and life coach with over 10,000 hours of real-time coaching experience. Greg coaches and consults with CEOs, small business owners, and professionals, helping them clarify their vision, create unique strategies to win at business, and develop the necessary skills to succeed in life. Greg also has an extensive background with helping others achieve their desired outcomes. He has designed and delivered over 20 programs with teaching high-level coaching skills to professional coaches, business people, and corporate managers. Prior to coaching, Greg was the vice president and partner working in the sales of investment real estate. He also worked in residential lending in the mortgage industry. He was treasurer of the San Diego chapter of Certified Investment Members and director of California Association of Realtors. And he was also director of San Diego Association of Realtors, as well as keynote speaker for several trade associations. On a personal note, Greg holds a second-degree black belt in the martial art of Aikido and black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which he still practices regularly. He also enjoys spending time with his son Mason, practicing yoga, surfing, and connecting with friends. So, Greg, it sounds like you have this wonderful all-around life that I know that you will be able to share with us and help us to become successful and abundant. And with that, Greg, I turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you so much for doing that. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I know we put you on the spot. So, JC, are you still there with me in the background? I just want to make sure I got my wingman there. Are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right.
We hear you.
Okay, good.
5x5.
Okay, great. Well, welcome, everyone. Again, my name is Greg Clowminzer, and I live here in beautiful Southern California, Carlsbad, California, to be specific. And I have a really beautiful life, and I love what I do. I love helping people, and I love sharing my understandings that I've accumulated over the last 25 years of working in the people helping profession. Now, I'd like to actually speak a little bit to my history just for a moment. And how I want to do that is tell you a little bit of a story. In the intro Victoria gave, she alluded to the fact that I'm a martial artist and that I have a background. I have a second-degree black belt in Aikido and now my first-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I want to talk about that a little bit because there's a real powerful lesson and message in there. And I practiced Aikido for a very long time and was a senior student and instructor. And for any UFC fans out there or mixed martial arts fans, and if you don't know what that is, that's two guys getting in a cage beating the heck out of each other. And it's one of the fastest growing sports around the world. But anyways, when that first came into the world and got popular, what happened is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu came in and it was clearly winning everything, and people hadn't seen it before. And it was just dominating. A guy named Roger Gracie was just beating everybody up. And so as a martial artist in Aikido, I looked at, well, that's really interesting. Maybe I'll go and learn a little Jiu-Jitsu, come back to my home dojo and teach it and integrate it. Well, I had a rude awakening, to say the least. I went over to try a little jujitsu, and all my martial arts training was basically useless. It was really ineffective. So I said, wow, there's really something here for me. And so I signed up to do jujitsu, and started at the end of the line where all the white belts are. And I made an interesting discovery. And what I discovered was the person to the right of me was a black belt in karate, and the person to the left of me was a black belt in kung fu, and below that was another high-level wrestler, and they were all there, and what they also discovered is how ineffective their martial arts were when it came to real self-defense and real fighting, almost like helpless, like a baby that couldn't defend themselves. So why I share that is what I learned is I still love Aikido, and it's near and dear to my heart, but it's not very effective if you're trying to protect yourself or on the street or any of that. It's a beautiful art. I love the philosophy of it. Like I said, it's near and dear to my heart, but it's not effective. Now, jiu-jitsu, on the other hand, is extremely effective. So you may be asking yourself, well, why am I sharing this with you? Well, the reason I'm sharing it with you is out of 25 years of coaching, I spent about 20 years in what I call the Aikido path. And now looking back, it was really the coaching I did for the first 20 years is the best I knew, the best I could do, but it wasn't really very effective. And it wasn't till a short time ago till I stumbled onto what I would call the jujitsu of coaching, and something that's extremely effective, but really misunderstood. And that's what I'm going to share with you today is what's behind all that. So if you can just kind of listen from that point of view, because I'm pretty sure we have some other black belts here, much like me at that end of the line in Aikido. And I respect black belts in Kung Fu, and I respect black belts in Judo and karate and all that. I have a tremendous amount of respect. But I just want to invite you to consider and really listen to this presentation as something that potentially could be even more effective than your current art or your current way of going about or of life, of abundance, of finances, of everything. Okay? Is that fair? I know it's a little bit hard to get feedback and for me to read people, but that's kind of the opening. JC, how does that sound so far?
I like that. I like that a lot.
Okay, good. All right. So with that, that's what I'm going to be pointing to is this effectiveness, that's kind of hidden behind the scenes of all human beings. And I call it the secret to abundance, is really understanding what's behind the human experience. Okay. So I call that mental mastery, and as JC and I were talking just a little bit earlier, he was talking about one of his old favorite shows, Kung Fu, and we started to talk, and he was sharing how he had done some meditation in the past and how really effective that was for him. So most people these days really understand the importance of what I would call a clear mind or a clear head. And you could even say the opposite of mental mastery would be mental illness, And so I'm going to be talking a little bit about that. Now mental illness, another way to call that is just kind of our own crazy thinking or habitual thinking. And unless we get that straightened out, it's going to be really hard to create results, okay, in a real effortless fashion with joy and fun and abundance and all that stuff. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. How's that sound, JC?
Keep muting myself. Yes, that sounds great.
Okay, great. All right, a little feedback. Okay, great. Yeah. So here's a real interesting quote. According to Harvard University, and the World Economic Forum, and this was published, I believe, in 2014, 2015, that mental health issues may cost $16 trillion in lost output over the next 20 years. Now, that's a pretty phenomenal number. Now, my peers who work with Fortune 100 companies have really dedicated their life to sharing the understanding that I'll be sharing with you today to Fortune 100 companies. Because what they're starting to recognize is that mental health, or another way to say that is state of mind, is now really showing up on the scenes in terms of performance, results, and outcome. Okay, so that's what we're going to be talking about here. So I want to start off with a really bold statement, and I invite you just to try this on, or poke at it or consider it. But what does it mean you can never outproduce your state of mind? Because I'm crystal clear that human beings can never outperform or outproduce their state of mind. Okay? And so we're going to talk more about that here. All right? So in order to illuminate that statement I just made, I want to talk about Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods is really known as a world-class golfer. In fact, he was unstoppable for years. He had the skills, he had the discipline, he had the practice, he had the experience. He was really unstoppable. Until what? Until what? What happened? Well, he had some personal issues that showed up in the media.
His father died.
Yeah, he had all kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And then what happened to his game? It went in the tank. Okay? So the reason I bring Tiger Woods up is state of mind, okay, is one of the most overlooked and misunderstood aspect of results, performance, success, abundance, anything. Okay? So when I talk about effectiveness, this is what I'm starting to point to is our state of mind. All right? So today I'm going to do my best to try to illuminate or really invite you to consider your relationship between state of mind and performance. It's like, what does your state of mind have to do with performance? As a parent, as a significant other, as a boss, as a solopreneur, what does your relationship with state of mind have to do with performance? And I'm going to suggest it has a lot to do with it. And again, it's one of the most overlooked and perhaps the most important part of performance, results, abundance, you fill in the blanks. Okay? I'll also be pointing to what I consider a new psychology. Okay? So most of the psychologies out there are focused on pathologies, diagnosis, and all of that. Very few people teach people psychology. What I mean about that is psyche, the mind, okay, and the logic of the mind and how it actually works. So I'm going to do my best in our short amount of time to point to that, okay. I'm also going to, highlight. In fact, I'll do that now. The limitations to daily routines. So what I mean by that is, I'm sure a lot of people on this call have figured out that their thinking and their state of mind or their headspace has something to do with the quality of their life, the quality of their relationships, the quality of the work they do, the impact and influence they have on others. I know many people are putting together that thought and state of mind has something to do with it. That's why people are so interested in learning mindfulness and why mindfulness made the cover of Time magazine. because people are putting this together. Now, there's a real innocent misunderstanding about all these rituals. I have clients, coaching clients that I work with, or a lot of people, and they have a list of rituals they're doing. They're doing journaling. They're doing their great gratitude rituals. They're meditating. They're going to yoga. They're doing Tai Chi. They're running around the block. Why are they doing all of that? Because they're trying to improve their state of mind. Well, in this presentation, I'm going to point to the very fact that those rituals, you can do those if you want to, but they're completely unnecessary when you realize and you understand what's behind the human experience. So, as I said before, my coaching practice before was the Aikido of coaching. So what that means is I help people work on strategies, come up with plans, help them with information, share content with them, and innocently thinking that if people knew better, they would do better. Well, there's wisdom in that statement, but there's a different type of knowing, okay? Like if people know better intellectually, they're no better off. It doesn't do anybody a darn bit of good to have an intellectual knowing of something, all right? Now, the proof of that is how many people go to the doctor with type 2 diabetes or go to the doctor and the doctor says you got to quit smoking, and they know that they need to make some changes, but they don't do anything because it's only an intellectual understanding. They get it intellectually, but it hasn't touched them or moved them. They haven't got it at a deeper level. So I call that the limitations, okay? We'll also be talking about how to discourage proof your business and be more resilient and bounce back. And then we'll also open it up to Q&A and questions, all right? So I know that you might already be anticipating this, but ask yourself, what determines your ability to do your best work, or when are you at your very best? So I was talking with a coaching client this morning. I asked him, I said, so when are you at your very best? And he said, well, when I'm out running. I went for a 7-mile run this morning, and I've had nasty thoughts come in, but they disappear relatively quickly. And man, I just can't believe the fresh ideas I get, the inspiration I get. I feel wonderful. And I said, well, that's fascinating. I said, that's fascinating. There's some interesting research when people are asked, when are you the most creative? You know what the research says that people are most creative when they're taking a shower, driving a car, on vacation, out for a walk or a run. That's when people are the most creative. So you could say that's when they're at their very best. Well, I asked my client, I said, so given the fact that you're at your very best when your mind is clear and there's not a lot of negative thoughts and you're able to get these out of the blue ideas, these fresh ideas, is that something that would be of interest to you without having to run 7 miles, or do all these rituals? He said, yeah, that'd be really interesting. And I said, well, all you have to do is realize how your mind works. And what we all, as all human beings, share, and it only works one way. And so he found that very, very interesting. All right. So on the flip side, you could say, well, what derails or demotivates you at work, or building your business, or reaching out to people, or talking to people, or getting through a project? What derails or demotivates you? Okay. Now, having spoken to so many people, and I encourage you to sit with that question: what derails you, or what demotivates you? And if you want, you can put those comments in the message bar and chime in. Feel free to do that. But what derails you or demotivates you at work? Now, a lot of people will say, well, when my boss gives me a hard time, or when my computer jams up, or they start looking at all these reasons for what derails or demotivates them. So I just want you to consider what that is, and be open to the possibility that there's something else that's so obvious that actually derails you and demotivates you. And let's see if through this conversation that's revealed to you. Okay? I already talked about this. When are you at your very best? And this is something for each of you to consider. When are you at your very best? As a parent, as a partner, as a boss, as a business person, as a marketer, when are you at your very, very best? And I'm going to suggest it's when you have your head on straight, all right? So again, some of these questions, just to kind of tease out, what are some of the factors that tend to make things difficult for you? You know, what's really funny is all of my clients that come and work with me, and it's not cheap to work with me, they come in here with problems and difficulties. And I always tell them, all my clients have the same problem, and that's them. And my job is to help them get out of the way and teach them what's underneath the hood of the human experience so they can solve their own problems. Okay? Now, that may sound really simple and overlooked, but I'm going to suggest that is the most effective way to create change and transformation in a human being's life. Okay? I give you a real powerful story of this. One of my most successful projects, he's not a client of mine, but he's a friend of mine, he was detained for an immigration technicality. And as we speak, he's locked up in a detention center just north of the border here. And he's slated to be deported back to Europe. And I've been coaching him and sharing this information that I'm sharing with you, what's underneath the human experience. And you'd think, given the circumstances that he's in, he'd be in a really poor mood and poor state of mind and poor me. But I got to tell you, he's the poster child for me right now, because he's a wonderful example of somebody who has this understanding of how the mind works and what's behind the human experience. And he's made a transformation from being a victim of his situation to being the creator of his experience moment to moment. And he's also starting, he's been in there 3 months, he's also starting to share with the other detainees and making an impact with other people. Now, this is somebody who wasn't at all interested in personal development or personal growth. He just found himself in this situation. He had reached out to me, and I started to kind of coach him from afar. And his partner, who comes to visit him, who's very displeased with what's going on, is now coaching her and grounding her and comforting her based on this understanding that I'm sharing with you. The same thing with clients who come to me and they're on the brink of throwing in the towel with their business, or they're just not sure how much longer they can do what they're doing. And sometimes it's in a couple hours, sometimes it's a couple months, sometimes it's a year or so. But when the penny drops, and one client in particular, he wanted to throw in the towel of his business, and he wasn't sure how much longer he can do it. Yesterday, we were talking. He's very, very excited about his business. Business is booming. He's hired 6 people. He's got a team of 6 people. He's gone from 1 to 6, and he's so grateful for this understanding, and it's making a really big difference, and he's creating a culture based on this understanding. So I want to get into what I call the surprising truth behind what drives performance. Now, I want to invite you to consider, what do you think drives performance? What do people think drives performance? And so, although we may not be in a direct conversation, I see us all right now, everybody listening here live and anybody listening to this in the future, is what drives performance? What do you think drives performance? And really sit with that and wonder about that for a moment. What drives performance? And then you could ask yourself, well, what is so important about performance anyways? What matters about performance? Okay? Well, here's what matters about performance. Everybody wants results. Whether you call that abundance, results, happiness, being profitable, having a better relationship, being a better leader, that's the end game. Everybody wants a better end game. They want better results. Okay? So what drives results? What drives results? Well, performance. That's why people are so fascinated about performance, is they realize that performance drives results, and people want better results. They want more of something. They want it to be better. They want it to be cheaper, faster, whatever it is. So performance is a big deal, but people don't really understand that very well. At best, they figure performance is driven by behavior, which is true. So behavior drives performance. Now, this is pretty much where a lot of coaching, cognitive behavioral therapy, this is kind of where it all begins. They look at managing people's behavior, controlling people's behavior, getting them to do things, doing reach out calls, doing this, doing that. And so the whole emphasis or strategy, if you will, for driving performance and results is based on behavior. And I'm going to suggest behavior is already too late. The wave is already crashed and gone by the time you're dealing with behavior. So now the question is, what drives behavior? What comes before that? Well, what comes before that is mood. You could say your feelings, okay? So, if you wake up in the morning, a lot of people let their moods dictate what they're going to do in life. Well, gosh, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. I know I should be doing something. I know better, but I just don't feel like going to the gym. Or I just don't feel like making those calls. Or I just don't feel like doing payroll today, or whatever the case may be. So moods have a big deal with driving behavior. And so if you're in a low mood, okay, not much is going to happen, okay, and it's not going to be very sustainable. So now the big question is, well, what drives moods, okay, and so what drives moods is thought, okay. What we think drives our moods, drives our behavior, drives our performance. Now, you could say, oh my God, what is this guy talking about? Well, that's so obvious. Well, it is obvious. We all recognize this. My whole job is simply helping people wake up to the truth and the power that their thoughts are driving their results. They're the source of performance. They're the source of results, and that's where it all begins, okay? So rather than get into positive thinking and affirmations and trying to control my thoughts and manage my thoughts, which is what a lot of personal growth is, I'm not interested in that. I'm actually interested in this invisible world behind thought that drives everything, okay? So that's what this is about. That's this new understanding. That's this new psychology. That's what I shared with the gentleman in detention. This is what I share with my clients. It's the most exciting, the simplest, the easiest way, the most effective way to drive results is the understanding of these three principles. The sheer, even the slightest insight, realization, or understanding has the power to transform your life. So the reason I say I'm a transformational business coach is because transformation happens in a flash, okay? And these principles, just an understanding of them, create transformation. So I want to say a little bit about understanding. My son, as I mentioned, is 8 years old. from my point of view, he was a little bit of a slow learner riding a bike. And we took the training wheels off and out in the alley, and he crashed and burned and crashed and burned. And when he did that, he had a hot little head on him. He would kick his bicycle, and he would yell at his bicycle, and he would call it names: a stupid bike, I hate my bike, I hate this bike, is blah, 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 blah. So something was wrong with the bike, all right? And then in a heartbeat, he turned it on himself. I hate myself, I'm so stupid, okay? Now, I'm going to suggest that all human beings default to the same silliness, is that we look for blaming the bike. And when we get done doing that, if we do it, we look at blaming ourselves, all right? And as a parent, from my perspective, there's nothing wrong with the bike, and there's nothing wrong with my son. And I'm going to suggest all of you listening here, listen carefully here. If you're frustrated or you're running into difficulties or struggling with something, I want you to hear this. There's nothing wrong with the bike, and there's nothing wrong with you. Okay, so what's missing then? You might say. Well, what's missing is my son had just not understood balance yet. That's it. He just didn't understand. He didn't have any insight into balance. Now, as a parent, I would love to give that to him. But here's what we all know. You can't give somebody that. You can't give somebody balance. They've got to discover that for themselves. They've got to find that for themselves, okay? And that's what and the reason I share that is because that's what these three principles are. They're going to be, you're going to go, oh my God, that's just a bike, and you're going to watch a video of bike riding. You're going, well, I understand that, or you're going to understand it at an intellectual level. The three principles that I'm going to share with you are not to be understood at an intellectual level, okay? They're only pointers to something. And I'm going to suggest it's like balance. They're pointing to balance. And you're going to have to find that for yourself, okay? So I'm reminded of one of my Aikido instructors, and very, very traditional Japanese instructor. And there wasn't much talking. They would go out and demonstrate a technique. And what he said, I can't give you this technique. You have to steal it from me. You have to take it from me, okay? And I'm going to say that's the same thing with these three principles, much like riding a bike. You're going to have to steal it. You're going to have to get it for yourself, all right? So I hope that makes sense. JC, is this tracking? Are you following along?
Yeah, I'm loving it.
Okay, great. So one of the greatest misunderstandings around performance is if you ask people, so why don't you perform better? They say, well, I just don't have the skills. I don't have business skills. I don't have sales skills. I don't have that. So they say, well, it's skills is drives performance. Or you ask people, well, what drives performance? Well, experience. The more experience you have, the better you're at, and you can perform. Well, based on my analogy earlier about Tiger Woods, he had extreme skill, extreme experience, but when his state of mind tanked, so did his performance. And that's the most overlooked part of the human experience is state of mind. It is the most important aspect of living a high quality life, a high performance life, an abundant life, is really mastering, mental mastery and mastering your state of mind. So what are these three principles? What is this guy talking about? Okay, so these principles here, when I teach and do groups and do workshops, I never do a PowerPoint presentation like this. This information is transmitted through a transformational conversation. It's engaging people in it and really helping demonstrate how universal mind is occurring right now in the moment a universal consciousness is occurring right now in the moment, and how universal thought is occurring right now in the moment. So it's a little more challenging to get that across through a lecture mode via a dialogue with some of you, but perhaps we may have time to do that at the end through the Q&A. All right. So universal mind, all of these principles. So let me go back and talk about something just for a second. The word principle. The word principle, it points to something that is consistent, that is always occurring and is constant. That's a principle. It's a foundation. Okay. So when I think of principle, I think of the principle of gravity. Gravity is a principle. Now, gravity works whether you believe in it or not, all right? And I'm going to suggest the same is true here with universal mind, consciousness, and thought. It doesn't matter whether you believe them or not. It doesn't matter if you respect them or not. It doesn't matter if you see any merit in them or not. It doesn't matter at all. They're still in effect. And the more you can respect these principles and the more you can acknowledge them, and I'll suggest the more you can align with them, there's a real magic that is what I would call assist you in creating effortless results. It's when we harness and align ourselves with these fundamental principles that guide the universe, that guide the wind behind the human sails. Okay? So these words, these are only pointers, okay? They're nothing in themselves. Universal mind, they're just words. And they do you no good, like an intellectual understand does you no good. They simply point to something that is a principle that's true, but like gravity is invisible, but can be recognized, all right? So how I'm defining universal mind, okay? And please stay with my definition and not yours. Don't add anything to it, okay? And universal mind is simply getting you to look in the direction, okay, of this invisible power, this intelligence that's behind all human beings. It's what we all have in common. It is this innate wisdom and intelligence. Like without it right now, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So the analogy for universal mind would be your energy source for the computer or device that you're listening with right now. If there was no energy, your device would be useless. And as human beings, if we are not connected, if there's without any energy behind us, whatever you want to call that, you know, we don't exist. Okay. Now, the further we get away from that, it's kind of like a device. The longer your device is not plugged in, the battery goes down, and sooner or later it becomes useless. And so many people are struggling unnecessarily in life with a low battery, okay, when it's so easy to reboot and get back to your resilience as a human being and really experience the abundance, okay, of life force and energy that's available to all of us, okay? So universal mind simply points to the fact that there's this principle, there's this energy behind the human beings that allows us to have this gift of life, okay? The second principle is consciousness. Without consciousness, we wouldn't be able to experience life. So consciousness allows us to feel, taste, and touch, to see things in different ways. Consciousness has infinite levels to it, okay? So consciousness, you could say, it points to the gift of awareness. Without awareness, this call wouldn't make any sense to you, okay? So universal consciousness points to this constant behind the human experience called awareness. Universal thought So universal thought is what gives rise to personal thinking, our ability to create as human beings. Universal thought is the gift of our ability to create. It's what we use to create. Without it, nothing happens. So when I think of universal mind, consciousness, and thought, I liken them to H2O. It's just one thing, but they can show up and be manifested in three different ways. Like H2O can be a solid, it can be a liquid, and a gas. It's all the same thing. So although I'm distinguishing them here, they're just all pointing to the same thing. And a realization and an understanding or insight, well, just like the bicycle, when the penny drops for people and they get something around this, it's transformative in their life. It makes a really big difference. It's super effective. Okay? So the three principles at work, just a quick overview. So the three principles at work is, number one, we live in a world of thought, like fish live in water. And our biggest challenge is we don't see it. That's why people hire coaches and people like me or bring me in to speak, is to help illuminate, to help wake people up to the fact that they're living in a world of thought, and the pond they're swimming in is often toxic and not serving them. Okay? You could say our thinking is our life. In fact, if the Martians came down and we're anthropologists, they'd look at us and they'd say, "What in the world's going on here? What do you do all day?" And the truth of the matter is, all we're doing every day, from the time we wake up to the time we go to bed, is thinking about things. Okay? So thought is a huge part of our life. I'm going to suggest that you really start to consider the fact that you're living in a world of thought. And the more you wake up to that, the more empowered you are, and you get behind the wheel of creating your life instead of life happening to you. Wisdom. Wisdom's always there to guide us if we know where to look. The problem is most people are looking in the wrong direction. What I mean by that is wisdom would not be found in a book. You might recognize someone else's wisdom, but that's just information. It's intellect. Wisdom comes when you look in the right direction. I'm going to suggest when you look in the direction of the principles of mind, consciousness, and thought, you now have your satellite dish turned in and tuned in to the signal of wisdom. And when you're not turned, when your human satellite is not turned in the direction of the principles, all you got is noise. All you got is fuzz showing up on the screen in life. And then you're trying to manage and control the noise. All right? And that's what most people are doing, is they're suffering needlessly trying to just manage and control their noise. Now, so I'll leave that at that. The next point here is someone's thinking doesn't change. If someone's thinking doesn't change, they can't change. All right? It's really funny that so many people reach out to me, and it's just hilarious. Everybody wants to change, but they don't want to change. It's the funniest darn thing. But if you want to change, then you got to change, and it's really a change of thought, and that can happen in an instant. My screen, I can't get. JC, can you read the next two for me, if you would, please?
Yeah. When our mind clears, our genius appears.
Yeah, beautiful. So that's kind of what I was talking about with my client who went for a 7-mile run this morning. His mind clears and his genius appears. He gets these great ideas. He's inspired. All right. The next one, JC.
We don't have to think our way out of our problems.
Oh my God, that's so beautiful. So I was working with a small group of people last night, and I was gently guiding this woman to see the fact that she didn't have a problem in life. She had a problem in her thinking, and she was trying to solve her problem in her thinking. Now, what was really funny is in the beginning of the meeting, she opened up with being a wonderful fan of Einstein. And so I brought to her attention what Einstein shared with the world. And what Einstein said is, whatever domain the problem is created cannot be solved in the same domain. All right? So to me, what that means is our problematic thinking, more thinking will never solve the problem. So we have to move to a different domain, okay? And there's several. There's, you could say a domain would be likened to a 20-story building, and if you've got a problem on the first floor and you're trying to solve it with the resources of the first floor, with the first floor creating it, you're going to beat your head into the wall. You got to go up to a higher floor, and you'll see it from a really different place, and that's what happens. That's why my peers who work with Fortune 500 companies will go in and work with them for 4.5 days. The first 2 days, they'll only be talking about what you're being introduced here to today. They spend 2.5 days helping people see they live in a world of thought and helping them understand how their mind works and help them see the fact that they're creating their own experience in the moment. And only then, when they see that and they realize that and they find some balance on the bicycle for themselves, do they bring in the biggest problems to solve within the organization, to consistently reduce spending by $5 billion a year for the next 5 years for some of these organizations and come up with remarkable solutions, all right? So the next is
changing
that you're
to a different platform to see it from a different perspective.
Exactly, JC, exactly. Well, here's the good news. Your mind has a built-in design for success, meaning that it'll self-correct and self-correct. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Another big idea here is what you see is what you get, all right? So I know many people here are in the abundance program, all right? So it's really important that, to catch your thinking and catch how you're seeing the world. If you see the world, I was working with another client, and one of her biggest challenges with her team is that so many people are in the thinking, and they see the world as the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, okay? Now, she sees that that's not a really helpful way to see the world, okay? And she's really trying to wake her team up to that, all right? In low states of mind, it's unwise to believe or trust or follow your thinking, okay? So, I got a message from a new client this morning. He says, oh my God, I had a really bad day yesterday. I was having a bad day, and then I decided to check my bank account, and boy, that just made me even more disgusted. And then I looked at my pipeline, and that really threw me into a tailspin. And then I went home, and it just sounded like a really good idea to share all this with my wife, and that didn't work out so well either. And now, he's getting these. He's starting to get these principles. He realizes that his mind has something to do with it, and it's throwing him into a tailspin. But he hasn't found balance yet, so he's crashing the bike. All right. So that he's a perfect example of somebody in a low state of mind. It's unwise to believe, trust, follow, act, make any decisions when you're in a low state of mind. All right. You only want to make decisions in a high state of mind. JC, would you do me a favor to read the last two?
To listen deeply to others instead of our own thinking gives us a much richer experience.
Yes. So each of you that's listening to the call, you might be listening to your own thoughts. You might be listening to your emails right now. The chances are the quality of your listening could be improved. So even right now, what I would encourage you to do is practice this deeper listening. See if you can shift gears and just listen to another, in this case me, and see the fact that you have a choice right now. You can choose to listen to your own thinking, or you can choose to listen to another, again, me in this case. Now, I'm going to suggest that your experience on this call will go up dramatically if you just listen to me, regardless of whether it's true or not, or you believe it, or any of that. You're going to have a much richer experience, and you might even find some balance, or balance might find you, is a better way of saying that.
This goes well with the next. We are only as stuck as our thinking.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So we're only as stuck as our thinking. Now, I've got a really graphic example of this. It was a metaphor that came up. It meant something. It means more to the guys than the girls. So the girls, you can kind of plug your ears or give me creative privileges here. But you know, I was working with a group of people and this client, and I said, you know, if you went poop, you know, would you get involved with the poop and start playing with it afterwards? And they said, of course not. I said, well, why do you get involved with your thinking? Why do you start messing around with it? And here's a really big idea for all of you. Okay, understand that unless you're looking in the direction of these principles, most likely most of your thinking is poopy thinking or stinking thinking. Okay, because it's all noise. The true signal comes when you're aligned with these principles. All right. So what I told people is you got to get in the habit of flushing your thoughts, like literally flushing them, and just letting them go. Now, most people, it goes back to that earlier statement, they innocently believe that working on their problems, their thinking problems, is somehow going to solve it. Okay? That's why we're calling this a new psychology. Is we're not interested in your problematic thinking. We're not interested in your pathologies. We're not interested in all that. What we're interested in is teaching you how your mind works, and once you see that, you're home free. And to my earlier statement, the mind has a built-in design for success, means there's nothing for you to do other than realize or understand balance, and the system self-corrects. Once you get balance as a bicycle, you don't need to go learn it again. When you're riding, it self-corrects, it self-corrects. It's the same thing here. When you start to understand your mind and your thinking and how you're creating your experience moment to moment, the sheer realization, understanding of that gets you unstuck. And you stop habitually getting involved with your thinking. So that's so this new paradigm that I'm referring to. How are we doing on time?
Take the time you want. It's okay. There's no cutoff time.
Okay, good. So what I'm going to share with you here is this new paradigm. It's what I call an inside-out paradigm versus an outside-in paradigm. And I often tell a kind of a story or a metaphor to kind of set the tone for this understanding, is that a paradigm is just a way in which seeing the world, you know, it's how the world occurs to us. And it wasn't long ago that the consensus on the planet was the world is flat. Okay? Now, it's really funny. Every time I tell this story now, there's one or two people that chime in and says, oh yeah, those people are back. There's people right now, there's a whole movement of people at flat world. So just, if you bear with me, just set that aside. All right. So there were people, very educated people. You could say black belts in their own endeavors, scientists, artists, historians, poets, kings and queens, and we lived on the planet, and they were dead certain that the world was flat. Okay, and because of that, understanding or that paradigm, it had implications. And the implications were they were limited to the extent of their travel. The implications were they were very fearful of the unknown. Okay, in fact, most of the ship industry, fishing or any of the shipping industry, I can't think of a better word, would stay very close to the shore, out of a fear of if they got too far off, they'd fall off the world, and whatever that meant, and usually it was very superstitious, whatever that was. Now, those are the implications of living in a paradigm has implications, and a flat world implication has fear, limitations, and all this. Okay. What's really fascinating too about that era is that there was also a lot of applications that were developed out of that paradigm. And one of the applications that was developed was the anchor business. These ships, cargo ships, fishing ships, they would have a handful of anchors at the front of the boat, and a handful of anchors on the back, and a couple on the side. And you'd ask, well, why in the world would they have all those anchors? Because if the fog rolled in and they got too far from land, they wanted to make sure that they had a backup device so that they wouldn't fall off the flat world, the edge of the world. So I'm not making this up. You can look in your history books, and so this is the thinking of a paradigm. Now, it wasn't till somebody had an insight, an inkling, a new understanding, a realization, an out of the blue idea, if you will, that the world wasn't flat. Okay. Now, just imagine how those people were received by somebody in an older paradigm. Now, this is so true for any emerging paradigm, any evolving paradigm, is that the older paradigm wants nothing to do with it. But you know what? The truth always prevails, and the world we've discovered is round. All right? Now, I say all this as background to this new paradigm or understanding about human beings and how things actually work. Okay, so this slide slipped in here, so I'll just mention it real quick, but I'll move on to the X. There's really three places in the world, or what I call quitters, copers, and creators. And so all of you here, this new paradigm is to get you in the driver's seat to be really the creators in your life and not quitters and copers. All right? So this is really the crux of understanding human beings. Okay, so the outside-in approach is the world is happening to me. So that center circle where it says center of influence is really you. The outer circle, the circle of concern, is the world in which you live in. Okay, and in this number one, this outside-in approach, the fundamental paradigm is the world's happening to me, okay? Now, that can go one of two ways. You can be a victim of your circumstance. You can also be a victim of your success. And what I mean by that is a lot of successful people reach out to me, and they go, gosh, I just don't understand it. I've got all the success and the trappings, and then when those dip, their bank account dips or their pipeline dips, their whole world is upside down, because that's what's defining them. The outside world, the circumstance, their relationship, their bank account, how many clients they have, how many people they enrolled, whatever it is, that's dictating their experience. And that's a really unpleasant model to live in. It's a reactive model. It's people who are reacting to life, okay? It's what I call living in the world of victimville. Now, nobody likes to think of themselves as a victim, but I'm going to suggest most people are living in this first paradigm, like the flatland people, of an outside-in paradigm. So what's the new paradigm? What's this new psychology? What's this new understanding that's based on the three principles? Well, the world isn't happening to me. The world is happening from me. It's from the inside out. I am creating my experience in the moment. Okay? So we're gonna look deeper into how is it that you're creating your own experience moment by moment, and life isn't happening to you. Now, when I first saw this, I thought I was a pretty responsible person. I had my black belt in life, in coaching, and all that, and I didn't see the fact that I still viewed the world as flat, like the world was happening to me. I'd get bent out of shape around how somebody looked at me, or I'd be concerned if somebody liked me, or I'd look at my bank account, and that would really dictate the amount of worry and stress and anxiety I would have, and that would be the reason I was stressed out and the reason I was anxious, and I lived in that outside-in paradigm. With this new understanding and new paradigm, I can't tell you how freeing and how liberating, and the peace of mind, the joy, the clarity, and the insights I live my life on a daily basis with this new understanding. Okay? So if number one is living in victimville, then number two is living in an infinite world of possibility where you're creating your experience moment by moment. So now the question is, how does that occur?
That, by the way, if it's to be, it's up to me.
Kinda, yeah. So I'll leave that one alone, but
Okay.
That's fine. So, well, I'll speak to it. So that's kind of an interesting one, because that used to be one of my mantras, if you will, but I see it a little differently now, because if it's to be, it's up to me, actually cut me off from universal mind. I became overly zealous of being self-reliant, okay? And as soon as I let go, if it's to be, it's up to me, like if it's to be, it's up to universal mind, my life just changed dramatically, like it was I was no longer carrying the world on my shoulders. It was so freeing and liberating. For me, JC, if it's to be, it's up to me, really didn't serve me too well. But the principles got me to see that there's something else that I can rely on that's has a lot more juice in it than just me. So that made a big deal for me.
I hear you.
So yeah.
No, I'm getting it. Go ahead.
Yeah. So how does the mind work? Well, your mind only works one way, and it's from the inside out. We feel our thinking in the moment. Okay. So each of you, I would say just check in with how you're feeling or what your experience is. If your experience is, wow, I'm really engaged, I'm really digging this, great. If you're, wow, this is boring, or I heard this before, whatever your experience is your experience, okay? And what I want you to understand is that you're actually creating that, not me, okay? And we're always feeling our thinking in the moment, and that's how we create our experience. Your mind has a built-in design for success. You could say universal mind has a built-in design for your success. It's life-affirming. It wants you to succeed, all right? It has your back, so to speak, if you just get out of your own way. And what I mean by getting out of your own way is stop getting involved in your personal thinking, okay? The deeper you realize these points, okay, the more whole, productive, and fulfilling you'll be. Now, again, I'm just pointing to this. What I found to stay in this conversation is just like me keeping you on the bicycle until something lands, till something opens for you, till you have a realization and insight or understanding that means something to you. Other than that, it's just a bunch of words, but it's pointing to something I'm going to suggest is quite remarkable. Okay? So this is a drawing. I'll take credit for it. And the one on the left with the little sad face, let me start with the one on the right. So the one on the right here, that's our halo. That's our connection. That's the satellite that's tuned into mind, consciousness, and thought. And if we could just live in that place, you could call it a clear mind, you could call it mindfulness, you can call it whatever you want, but that's really ultimately what we're after here is living there. Now, unfortunately, most people have dogpiled their thinking on top of that, and I just call that noise, and there's no room for signal, for your own inner wisdom, your own common sense to prevail, all right? Now, this diagram here, what you don't understand is just above the halo of the sad face is an original thought, okay? That's an original thought. And the problem is, instead of flushing that thought, somebody plays with it and now has more thoughts about that, and thoughts about that, and thoughts about that, and thoughts about that. That's why I call it dogpiling. And now you're off, completely not present, not engaged. So how much is abundance? How easily is it for you to create results? It's not. It's extremely difficult. You're having to work much harder than necessary just because of this a phenomena that's occurring. So how does the mind really work? Well, something happens. That big star out there, something happens. Okay. Now I'll share with you a story. I had a good friend of mine. He's a physician. He's a GI. He's a gastrointernist, and he's also a meditation student of mine and a very good friend. And he really endorses and loves the work I do and really wants to support it. And we were having a conversation one day, and he said, "You know, Greg, the results are in. The research is coming in. And it says colitis and irritable bowel syndrome and these disorders are stress related. Do you think you could help some of my patients?" And I said, "Absolutely." And so he sent over one of his most difficult patients who was suffering from an acute breakout. And it was riddled with stress, and we got to talking. I spent 2 hours with him, and he saw something for himself. But as I look at this man who came to visit me, he's a retired airplane pilot, 75 years old, and his something that happened was he's sitting in his living room, and his dog comes in and starts sniffing him. And he goes into an anxiety and stressful event. And I said, "Well, tell me more about that. What's happening?" He's, "Oh, well, I know she wants to go for a walk, and I don't want to take her for a walk." And so what happens is, all that happened was the dog came over and was sniffing him. You know, the funny thing is, I asked him, "How long you had that dog?" He's all, 7 years. I said, "Well, why didn't it bother you before?" And something popped for him. He's all, "Well, I didn't have the thoughts that I have about now." So something happens out there, okay? It's what I call objective reality. When the thought comes in, the little square there, that thought there is self-generated, okay? It's not coming from outside. It's self-generated. He had the thought that the dog wants to go for a walk, and he started to get himself all stressed out about that. And if you go down to the line below, he was feeling that stress in his belly, ironically giving him acute outbreaks in his intestines. All right, so this is what happens at a flash in the moment. And the deeper people realize the fact that you're always feeling your thinking in the moment, and you're creating your own experience from the inside out, even though it looks like the dog is being a pain in the ass, your kid's being a pain in the ass, there's a tragedy that happened in the world. None of that generates your experience. Nobody can make you think what you're thinking. Only you can. What illuminates your thought is consciousness. Okay, your consciousness brings it into reality. It adds color, life, sensation to it. You feel it, all right? And that's what creates your experience. Now, the nature of the principles and the work I do is helping people see this in real time in their practical everyday life, and helping them illuminate the fact and helping them take back the power that it's just a thought. Okay? And they don't have to be afraid of their thoughts, and their thoughts will pass if you don't mess with them, if you don't get involved with them. That's part of the built-in design. If people just realize the fact that thoughts are transitory, like clouds in the sky, if you leave them alone, they'll take care of themselves. What I mean by that, we all know that if you cut yourself or you scratch yourself, your body will heal itself on its own. There's nothing for you to do. This new psychology and understanding comes to the same realization. When you get a psychological boo-boo, if you just leave it alone, the built-in design of universal mind, thought, and consciousness will take care of it itself if you leave it alone. And that's all you got to do is just leave your thinking alone. So, to recap, business growth, performance, abundance begins and ends with your state of mind. Managing behavior, performance, and results is too far after the fact. You've got to get back to the beginning. Understanding that the causal nature of behavior, performance, and results is thought is key. JC, if you'd help me with those last three.
Yeah. If you want to improve performance, your thinking has to change.
Beautiful. Continue.
You can't change your thinking, but your thinking can change.
Yep. So that's a little twister for people. People realize that they need new thinking. Okay. Now, there's a lot of personal growth and a lot of stuff out there that wants you to come up with new thoughts and positive thoughts and affirmation. That's not what this is about. This is entirely new technology, entirely new understanding, is that you need new thinking. You can't change your thinking. Like, what's really clear is I don't know what I'm going to think an hour from now, but there's going to be some thinking that shows up. Now, if I don't get involved with that thinking and I let it pass, I'm going to get some fresh thinking. Now, if people just let go of their thinking, they'd get some better thinking that would actually transform their lives. You don't have to go out there and try to change your thinking. That's getting involved in it, okay? The last one.
Ease and effortless, yes, is a byproduct of insight and understanding, not more thinking and working harder.
Beautiful, beautiful. So that's what I've got for you guys here today. I hope it was enlightening, informative, potentially some seeds for some transformation on your part. If you'd like to learn more about me or any of that, feel free to visit my website and reach out to me. If you have questions, I'm happy. I've got a few minutes here. We can field a couple if you have them. Other than that, I really appreciate you having me here today, JC.
It's been wonderful, and yes, I'm all the time living in a very unique. Sometimes I've been asked, I was even evaluated psychologically in the Air Force. I told you I was in the Air Force because I was always somewhere else. And what I was doing was just opening myself up to that universal thoughts, keeping it open for thoughts coming from the universe, matter of fact, one of my favorite musicians is the Moody Blues, which is just now one of the people that you can vote on for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. My favorite album of theirs is A Question of Balance, and it's when we finish, I'll show you a picture of it that I have up here, where it is opening up yourself to that universal thoughts that So let me open it up here for Q&A.
Okay.
I have to actually take. I think I have to take. Well, maybe. Let me see if I can open it up to Q&A here. So
questions, comments, insights.
Here we go. Nope, they ducked out. Here's Gary.
Thank you, Greg. That was just fantastic. I've learned so much from that.
Okay. Good.
I want to ask you how my biggest concern, or I don't want to say concern, my biggest problem, I guess is the right word, is I'll be in a positive frame of mind, and I'll be getting things done, and I'll call people, and everybody agrees, and this and that, and we're going to do that, and that sounds great. Then somebody will call and say, I am so upset about this. I can't believe that doesn't work like that. And that negative sentence comes in there and starts affecting your positive mind, so now you're looking left instead of you should be looking right. I don't know if you followed that or not.
Yeah, no, I got it. No,
it spoils the moment. The moment.
Yeah,
I have trouble with that sometimes.
No, I get it. I really do, and that comes up quite a bit. Now, here's what's really beautiful about this understanding, Gary, is once you find balance, like once it moves beyond intellectually grasping it, and you really start to see you're living in a world of thought, and you see how you're creating your experience in the moment, you start to see the innocence of people living in a flat world. And you just have compassion. You go, oh my goodness, this person's having some frustrated thinking right now. Like they're really frustrated. And that's coming through. You start to see that they're creating their own experience. Like as a parent, I find this really helpful. Like, with my son, if he's in a meltdown or in a low mood or whatever it is, I realize that that's based on his thinking, okay? Now, I had a teaching moment with him. This is amazing, really, because as an 8-year-old, he has an understanding that his thinking is connected to his belly. Kids, the number one reason they go to the nurse's office or parents take them to the ER is because they're complaining of tummy problems, okay? And are you still there?
Yeah.
I'm
actually sharing my screen here.
Okay. Got it. So what happens is my son actually saw for himself that his thinking was causing his tummy problems. He put that together himself. Now, again, the deeper you realize it's just the more compassion, the more understanding, and you can see that people are. This person who just came in and rained on your parade, you just go, oh my gosh, they've got some really crazy thinking going on right now. I remember when I first had this insider realization, I was at a traffic light, and I heard the guy next to me revving up his car and peeling off. I had this feeling or insight, it's like, oh my gosh, that guy, I could feel the mood he was in. And simultaneously, I knew what his thinking was. It's the craziest thing. And so we're just more engaged. It goes back to listening to what's behind what somebody's saying, not taking it personal. I don't know if that helps at all, but
that makes a lot of sense.
The deeper you understand this very simple thing, and the simplest thing is our mind only works one way. Not yours, not mine, all of us, every human being that's ever been born and ever will be born, it all works the same way. And the deeper you see that and you understand that, and that each one of us is creating our experience, not the other. Now, in relationships, this is really helpful because so many of us think that, well, I made her upset or she made me upset. It's like, no, it doesn't mean that we don't do things that aren't appropriate, but it's like nobody can make you upset. Like, I'm divorced, and my ex-wife and I are best friends right now. It's like, and I would not be in that place without this understanding. What I'm pointing to is, if this intrigues you, this idea, these principles, I'd say just go deeper with them, and that's the resilience of being in business. My business owner clients crazy stuff happens to their businesses, but they bounce back. This is a new definition of happiness. It's called resilience, okay? You just bounce back way quicker, Gary.
Mm-hmm. Yep, okay, thank you.
All right, great, thank you.
And let's see, who's next here? Michael? Michael?
Yeah. Hi, Greg. It's Michael here from New Zealand.
Hi, Michael.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, a lot of what I've heard on this call, it kind of resonates with me. Some of it was new that I'd never really heard of before, and I've actually taken notes. So I'm going to be, sort of going over it all and getting. But my biggest problem is, for me, is not so much my mindset. I'm kind of, that's something I'm working on, but the biggest thing for me that I've found is, and it kind of changes from day to day, is it's a combination of procrastination. That's the biggest one. Mm-hmm. And I have all these sort of chores and tasks that need to be done, but kind of laziness sets in, or as I said, a combination of laziness and procrastination.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So procrastination, what is that?
Procrastination, it's deciding on which way to go, or get it. And that's the way I look at it. Sort of deciding on which way to go or when to do it.
Yeah, got it. So for me, that means, procrastination, there's a lot of thinking about getting something done.
Yeah, exactly. It's
right.
more thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what we're pointing to. That's what we're pointing to. It's not the what we're pointing to is that procrastination is a thought. Like for me, it's like I see something and the thought is, well, not now. Like I'm really clear, like because I see that I'm living in a world of thought, and I understand that procrastination is a behavior, all right, and before that is a mood, and before that is thinking. So I've got some thinking, and for me, I see how procrastination shows up for me is just not now do the dishes, not now take the trash out, not now. So it's just it's a not now thinking, for me. I live down here next to the border in Mexico, and in Mexico they have another version of that called mañana, okay? And that means not today, Oh. All right. So if you just see that you've got some thinking, all right, called not now or procrastination, but you don't let your thinking, like you don't give it anything.
Yep.
And you don't wrestle with it. You don't poke around with it. You just let it go. You'll get a new thought, and you'll have a thought going, I guess I really should go, register my car at the DMV today.
Okay.
Right? Because that's your wisdom. That's, all this, that not now thinking or procrastinating thinking is just getting in the way of your connection with your own inner wisdom, okay, and your own common sense. Does that help at all?
Yes, it does. Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mike.
Thank you. Okay.
All right.
I got time for one more if there is, and then I gotta get moving here. How are we doing?
Mark or Victoria, would you like to chime in and just because there's no more questions, you want to just chime in with something?
Yes, I absolutely would. Greg, that was amazing. I mean, absolutely amazing. I loved it. Awesome. I wouldn't have missed this for anything. And like you said, we've heard some of these things before, but the one key point that stood out to me was when you said, just listen. Just listen to what I'm saying, rather than thinking about what you already think about this or what you've heard about it or know. Just listen to what I'm saying. And when I did that, it's like it just opened up a whole new world. And I appreciate that so much. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm glad that helped. Great. All right. Well, thank you for all of you for allowing me to be here today. And JC, appreciate the opportunity. And you guys have a wonderful weekend. And we'll see you again, and you'll have me on another call.
I'm sure we'll have you back.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Take care, guys. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye.